The idea of us collectively helping each other out through slightly higher taxes is a good idea.
Do you remember Reagan years? I mean, I wasn't here.
I'm 61, yes, I remember Reagan.
See, thanks to Reagan, I'm here, obviously. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, you know. That's well, the reason.
Thanks to Reagan and Gorbachev.
No.
Oh,
no.
Gorbachev would have never torn down the wall if Reagan hadn't said it?
No, absolutely not.
Perestroika was a joke?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. Let me explain what would have happened.
Actually, I would go back to Gdansk.
Well, it's a different story. Gdansk and Walesa versus Gorbachev,
Walesa,
two completely different things.
Right, but if it hadn't started in 1980 in Gdansk, there probably would have never been a collapse of the empire.
Because Cuba still exists and North Korea still exists. The only two remaining so-called socialist countries, but obviously none of them ever war. I mean, you know that since you studied history.
North Korea is a dictatorship.
Well, so was USSR, so was, even though USSR stands for Union of Soviet Socialists.
Supposedly in the USSR, if you got sick, you might get some health care. If you wanted education, you might get it. In Cuba, under socialism, Cuba's health care and education system got better than under Batista. Much better than under a capitalist Batista.
You know what's really funny? And again, you being a historian, so we can talk about history, is when people take certain events in a certain point in history,
kind of like Reagan tearing down the wall,
in the past, and then compare it with present. I mean, I can only go as a valid comparison when you talk about a certain country in the world, certain standard of living, or the way of life and so on, at the same time frame. So when you talk about Batista versus Cuba, 1958, 59,
62,
you know, well, yeah, I mean, even in America, we were not as well off as we are today. If you take other countries...
How come all the Republicans have loved to go back to the 1950s? For some reason, they love it.
Well, yeah, I just learned recently it wasn't really that great in the 1950s. I thought that it was, but it wasn't. I thought that the Second World War...
But once you found out that they were taxing at 70% in the 50s, you went, no,
yeah, exactly. So no, it wasn't so good. Right. So, when you talk about Cuba, and there's, by the way, another really important point that people always kind of gloss over, and that's the cost of lives. Even if hypothetically, even though it's not true, even hypothetically, the Cuban standard of living has improved versus Batista.
Yeah.
How can that justify killing thousands and tens of thousands of totally innocent people?
But you said that's hypothetical.
No, it's the fact.
Tens of thousands of people died
No, it's the fact. It's the fact. It's not hypothetical. In the Soviet Union, close to 50 million were murdered.
Oh, yeah.
In China, number one, Mao Zedong, whose portrait still adorns Tiananmen Square, who still has a mausoleum. He's the number one killer in the world. So
Stalin's number 2 and Hitler's number 3.
Number 3, right, exactly. So, again, there can be only valid comparisons when we talk about the same historical time frame. Today in America, today in Cuba, today in Germany, today in China, today in North Korea. Right or wrong?
That'd be like asking that black guy if it was better for him back in 1860, when there was still slavery in this country.
Yeah, exactly. But then people go back in history. It's like, oh, wait a minute. We had slavery, or we didn't provide human rights for everybody. But hello, name one single country where humanity wasn't their vocabulary. It just didn't exist. Slavery was the norm all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, so how
we were one of the last, what would be called Western civilizations, to give up slavery. And there's a lot of people in our country that seem to want to gloss over it, like we shouldn't apologize for being slave masters.
No, we shouldn't. No,
we should apologize.
No, we should not. And
we should apologize for Thomas Jefferson, who was our greatest founding father. I love the man. UVA. UVA. He
Look,
started the college, but he was a slaveholder.
Here's another.
And it was a different perspective.
It's
where they thought then and what we think now.
But here's another theory of mine.
Okay.
How many blacks in Africa today drive Cadillacs?
Usually the people in the cabinet or the people who rule.
And that's about it.
Yep.
And Africa is the whole continent.
Probably 1 or 2% in any of those countries. Probably less.
At best.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how many blacks in this country drive, decent cars, enjoy decent living over here?
There he goes, talking about blacks driving big cars. See, he picked the Cadillac. It's an old joke.
It's an old joke. That's why I use Cadillac. I can use Lexus. If you want to go Lexus, Lexus, whatever.
I see your point.
So the point is,
you're comparing two things that aren't relative.
No, I do.
Just like you were trying to
hear me out.
He's saying Batista and Cuba today. You're comparing Africans to Americans who were born in a capitalistic country where they had opportunity.
Yes, but hear me out. I mean, think about this way. Let's say we never had slavery in this country.
Can I get a copy of this tape when you're done?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So let's say we never had slavery in this country, okay? Right. And the people, the blacks that live in this country today,
they would have never been here.
They would never been here.
Because we brought them here as slaves. That's the only reason they ever got
back then, exactly. So they still would have lived in Africa today. Yep. They wouldn't have lived in Brazil, they wouldn't have lived in Central America, they wouldn't have lived in South America. So they still would have lived in Africa, right?
Right.
So, since we're talking about different time frames, so Africa back then, America back then, let's for argument's sake assume that it was the same, even though it wasn't, but let's say in America it was as bad as it was in Africa back then, back like 200 years back, right. Okay? So now fast forward to the 21st century. The blacks, the descendants of the slaves, okay,
fought for 100 years after they were given their
whatever. Fought, fine.
Whatever.
Fine. I'm against slavery. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally against slavery. They fought.
Any member of the former person from the Soviet Union opposes slavery.
They fought. Every reasonable person is against slavery. Any thinking person is against slavery. So they fought. They won because they could, because this is America, okay? In Africa today, same 21st century. Can they fight for their rights? Can they win?
Until they finally fought for their rights
and look what the shithole, they are in today.
No, that's Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe.
Now South Africa. Come on, they just killed like 50. Speaking of mines, they killed like 50 or so miners, or 34, whatever. But that's besides the point. Again, the point I'm trying to make, getting back to apologizing for slavery. No, hell no. They have to be thankful in this respect for slavery, even though it was evil back then, but it was the same evil.
The Soviet Union should never apologize for the gulags, right?
It's a different story. Because I'll explain why.
You had a system that created gulags that put anybody who disagreed with them.
But has the life of those gulag survivors improved afterwards? Has it improved? Has that system, gulag system, made their life eventually better?
Where, in Soviet Union?
Yes. No, in the Soviet you brought gulag as an example?
Yes.
No. The gulag prisoners, their lot has not improved because of the gulag system. Right?
But do you know?
But do you see the differences?
Okay,
the lot of the blacks who were slaves back then has improved dramatically because of slavery.
I don't agree with you 100%, but I do see your point.
I agree in principle with what you're saying.
It is logical.
Okay.
But it's just as easily to say that more blacks.
But what is it going to hurt to apologize?
Because there's nothing to apologize for. Period. Nothing. Slavery existed back then everywhere. Deal with it.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
Most of the Western civilizations had given it up back in the early 1800s. It took us a civil war to kill 600,000 of our people to get their freedom.
Is there a difference between slavery versus serfdom, for example?
Versus corporatism? Had to throw that in there. Yeah, look at he's refocusing. Let me get a shot of that guy.
Okay, listen, guys. We've covered a lot of territory.
We have covered a lot of territory. I enjoyed it.
Okay,
just think about the moral imperative. If you consider yourself a moral person, the idea of taking care of the least of us.
So what do you think? Having spoken with me, let me see for how long?
I've
1
spoken
hour
with
and
you
9
probably
minutes.
for about an hour and 9 minutes.
Yes.
And I assume you're a moral person. I assume.
And I'm a
And most things you've told
Republican,
me-
and I'm a Tea Partier.
Yes.
And,
And it's rare to find that combination.
that's not true. That's not true. Because I'll explain why. I went to a Tea Party event in 2009. There was a huge group of people that descended in Washington.
Right.
Everybody came there on their own time,
Yep.
their own money,
Brought their own guns.
brought their own guns if
Guns.
they could. There's nothing. I'm sure you're for the Second Amendment because it's a totally different.
Oh yeah,
story.
I totally believe in the Second Amendment if
Okay.
they read it for its real value and said that a militia
we can
must
discuss
train.
that. but getting back to the Tea Party and
Right.
moral people. Every person that I spoke with, of course I couldn't speak with 500,000 of them. Actually, there were more than 500,000 in 2009.
Or at least that's
Every-
what Fox told us. Go ahead.
I
And
was
Fox
there.
is the ones that orchestrated it, but go ahead.
I was there.
I know you were there.
Okay, so I can tell you
There was a lot of people.
how far it's stretched from the Capitol. And every single person, again, that I spoke with had the same values, had pretty much the same principles, and there were 0 arrests. We all disposed of our banners in appropriate places. So what is there against the Tea Parties? I mean, what's this thing about right-wingers, tea baggers? I mean, I'm one of them. And it seems like we have a decent conversation, and
Oh, yeah,
it seems like we agree on
But
a
see,
lot of things.
there's a lot of people in your group that would call me a lot of names, and there's people in my groups that would call you names like he did.
That's not true. That's not true. We're not calling anybody names. No.
Getting ready to evict. They've got trucks and everything. Courtney was streaming, and she said that's why she's on that side of the fence.
The cops are getting ready to push us out of here.
Well, it's a private property. They should.
Oh yeah.
That's how
I
it
just don't
works.
want to get. I just don't want to get.
Yeah, we're not here to
tear
get
gassed.
arrested. I'm here
No,
to make a statement.
No. All right, guys. Nice talking to you.
I enjoyed it.
Vote Republican.
Don't hold your breath. The blue color doesn't do you good.
Especially
Hold your breath
Virginia.
that long.
We'll take Virginia back.
No.
All right, see ya. Bye-bye.
Here. Send me that video. My email's on the bottom.
Okay, I'll send you the link. You
All
got
right, send me
it.
the link. That'll work.
Okay,
That'll work.
you got it.
Thank you. Take care.
You got it. You too.
I enjoyed
Bye-bye.
it.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.